Welcome back to the channel. My name is Steven. I'm a pharmacist and I own 52 units of real estate. So today I want to talk about why I decided for the past 11 years to focus on increasing my assets while trying to limit my liabilities. So at a high level, assets is something that puts money in your pocket. Like if you were to buy a piece of real estate and let's say it were to cash flow $300 a month, that's technically an asset because it's putting money in your pocket and it has appreciation. Over time, you have depreciation, which is a tax write-off, and then you have principal pay down, right? So like real estate is like an asset that, assuming that it's rented out and you get more money than what you're putting in, right? Buying like index funds is an asset because over time, this is also giving you money and growing over time. Something that's a liability would be like buying a car, right? So if I were to constantly upgrade a car every 2 years and get a car loan, that's putting money out of my pocket for the car, and that's gonna basically be considered a liability, right? Now one can argue that a car, if let's say you had it and then you were to be an Uber driver or you were rent the car on Toro, then technically it's considered an asset at the time, right? And then same with like real estate. Like if it's a primary residence, technically, like my primary residence here, it's a liability because it's putting money out of my pocket because I have to pay the mortgage every month. But my 26 unit is an asset because it's giving me monthly cash flow, right? So I've always been focusing on basically trying to increase my assets and limit my liabilities as much as possible. So let me kind of deep dive into this. So basically, when I graduated back in 2013, I came out with $250,000 of student debt. And that was to get my pharmacy degree to become a pharmacist. So, once again, technically my student loan is a liability, but it gave me the ability to make six figures as a pharmacist. And so I in the beginning, I just focused on increasing my income by job hopping, by going to hospitals that paid more, by trying to move up into management, and while also keeping my expenses the same or low. So when I graduated, I was used to being a poor college student, so I just kept it that way. I just lived very humbly, lived very frugally, and I was able to delay gratification. Like I didn't upgrade to a new car immediately. I was fortunate where my dad bought me I think a 3-year-old used BMW for about $25,000, and I basically drove that car from 2013 until most recently. Until I got my Tesla when my BMW broke down on the side of the freeway because the transmission busted, and I had to replace it. And then after I replaced it, I just sold it and then bought my Tesla. So I kept my expenses very minimal so that I can have a high savings rate. So like for context, I was probably at one point when I was making about 160K, which is about maybe 8,000 take home. I was living at home for free, so I had like no rent, and I would just eat out and buy stuff occasionally, and that was maybe like $1,000 a month, right? Like I was a very simple person. I just like would go to work, I would go to the gym, and I would buy like the annual 24-hour fitness gym membership, and that was pretty relatively inexpensive. And I just would eat out. I didn't eat fancy. I wouldn't go to like Michelin star restaurants. Occasionally I would, but not like on a weekly basis. And whenever I go out, most restaurants make money on the drinks and makes money on the dessert. So I refrain from buying drinks or getting dessert at restaurants, but I'd focus more on the entree, right? So these are just little like frugal, hacks where you can have the experience without like breaking the bank on like if you buy a bottle of wine at a steakhouse, that's expensive. If you were to buy dessert at a steakhouse, it's expensive. Instead, I would eat at the steakhouse, enjoy the steak, enjoy the entree, then I would go somewhere else more cost effective for dessert, or if I want a drink, right? So I was just focused on increasing my income and then keeping my expenses the same, so that in that example, if I'm, let's say, saving $8,000 or making $8,000 a month and my expenses were $1,000 a month, I had a $7,000 margin and maybe take out like $2,000 of that for my student loans. So I have about $5,000 in terms of like what I could save, right? So if I had $5,000 of what can I save, I could do many things with that, right? I could invest it. I could invest it in a 401k, which I did. I'd max out my 401k. I could make extra principal payments to my student loans, which I did. And that's how I was basically able to pay off my student loans, $250K of student debt in 4 years. Was literally just focused on increasing income, keeping my expenses minimal, and taking that difference to basically pay down my loans faster. And I did the same concept, right? So by paying off my student loans, I'm paying off a liability. off the sheets, right? So now I'm not obligated towards this $2,000 a month payment for that. So after doing that, I just said, okay, now I want to, focus on getting some assets. Now my student loans are gone, so that's a huge anchor lifted off of me, right? And it's crippling, right? Having $250,000 student debt is crippling. And then now I just said, you know what? I want to save up to buy a house. And at the time, I wanted to buy a primary residence with the intention of living in the master bedroom and renting out the 3 other bedrooms. This is called house hacking, right? So now at this point, it's technically the real estate's called it's now income generating because I'm house hacking. I was renting out each room for about $1,000. I had 3 bedrooms. That's $3,000 a month that I was getting in my pocket. And I had to pay about $1,500 a month to live there, and I still need a place to live, right? So it's a great way to subsidize your living expense while getting some income, right? And now that I'm getting $3,000 a month, and now at that point, I think I was taking home maybe like $10,000 a month, right? So you can do the math. I'm making $10,000 a month. My loan payment is gone. I'm spending, let's just say, $2,000 a month, and my living expense is about $1,500. To live there, so it's $3,500 a month. So I was able to save $6,500 a month again. And once again, what I do with that huge margin, I would then take that to invest in the 401k, invest in life insurance, save for a down payment on a house, right? To invest in a way. So I would say for like the longest time, and I would say even till today, like my savings rate has always been significantly high, right? Like I would try to save, at one point, probably like 60-70% of my income and invest that. Now it's a little bit different. I take home about $12,000 just my W-2, and just my mortgage here now, it's about 30. Let's just call it $3,700. So let's just make it $4,000, and let's just say my living expense is another $1,000 on top of that. So that's $5,000. And I'm basically taking home $12,000. So even now I have a pretty decent spread in terms of like how much I'm saving in that. So like you compound that over like 11 years, right? Imagine having a 50, 60, 70% savings rate for 11 years, and that's how your money grows, right? And I bought more real estate over time. So as I bought more assets, so like for example, my real estate, after I house hacked it, I'd move out, buy another one that would house hack, and then rent out the last house, and then hopefully the property would be cash flow positive or break even. So now it's kind of like an asset because it's putting a little bit of money in your pocket, and now I'm house hacking again. So I would repeat that process, and eventually I got to the point where I don't want to house hack anymore because I want privacy. So I focused on buying more cash flow focused real estate out of state. So that's when I went into Huntsville, Alabama. I wanted some cash flow, I wanted some appreciation. So Huntsville, Alabama had a good mix, and I would buy this piece of real estate that puts about maybe $700 a month in my pocket. So now it's another asset. And then I went up to apartments, right, where I'm buying apartments, and they're putting in like I think my 26 unit cash flowed about $7,000 this month. So that's putting $7,000 a month in my pocket. But reality is it's being saved for expenses, but I'm getting that principal pay down, I'm getting the appreciation, I'm getting the tax advantages that are moving forward because I'm not a real estate professional. So like I'm just accumulating a bunch of assets over time, right? So most of my money, like I feel broke, like ironically, I feel like I'm paycheck to paycheck, and this is a key message, but like I'm spending all my money towards income generating assets versus most people are spending all their money on liabilities and nothing that produces income, right? Like that's how you fall into that trap where, I'm worth $6 million. I drive a Tesla Model Y, and everyone drives a Tesla Model Y. If you were to drive around California, Bay Area, LA, everyone drives a Tesla Model Y. They're actually pretty affordable now, believe it or not. I think I bought mine for, I think 40, I don't even remember. I think I bought for like $46K, but I got like the tax credit, the federal tax credit, because I was laid off that year. So it was about maybe $40,000. And I got free supercharging for about 6 months, and I was commuting a lot at the time. So that probably knocked off another like $2,000-$3,000 in gas. So, I got this Tesla for like maybe $38,000, something like that, give or take. So, for someone worth $6 million, that's relatively speaking a drop in the bucket, right? But there's a lot of people who, they don't make that much money, but they still drive a Tesla Model Y, right? And that's fine, but like it's all margins, right? I can clearly afford a much nicer car, but a lot of people, they spend all their money on cars, and which is a liability. But I'd rather spend that money towards an asset, and eventually once that asset compounds and builds up and kicks out a lot of money, I can use that to then pay for my liabilities, right? So like if you watch a lot of those, like that, she's like, oh, don't buy the Ferrari, buy the apartment first, which the cash flow from the apartment will pay for the Ferrari, right? So it's just kind of like that thing. I'm basically delaying my gratification. And don't get me wrong, I like driving my Tesla Model Y. It's very comfortable. I had a BMW 3 Series 2-door coupe, and I'm over that phase now. Kind of that sports car that hits bumps hard and hits the turns, and you're low to the ground. I had my 10 years of doing that. But maybe down the road, I may consider getting a car once my assets are at the point where I don't have to work at W2 anymore. I know my future family is taken care of, and I'm comfortable with it, right? And I have other income producing assets that are doing it. So for me, that's why I'm always that way, where the downfall of a lot of entrepreneurs is they take their money and then they're like, oh, I'm always going to make this money, and then they'll inflate their lifestyle significantly, right? But once their business turns the other way, they didn't buy any income producing assets that's not dependent on you working. This is the whole passive income thing, right? For me, I kind of went a little bit too intense in the passive income route, right? So now I'm trying to focus on building, YouTube, which is active, coaching, mentorship, which is more active. I created the school community, which I have weekly Q&A calls, and that's another income source that I'm trying to build up. So but whatever money I make from that, I hope to dump it into more assets that are more passive, right? Index funds, buy more real estate. So because I know it's not forever, right? A lot of content creators, a lot of professional sport athletes, the money's temporary, but they are not smart enough in investing into assets that pay for them later, right? Because they're privileged to have large lump sums of money. Great. For me, if I somehow killed it with my school community, mentorship, coaching, and I made $1 million, let's just say, I would use that $1 million to pay off this house. So now I've freed myself of a $5,500 a month mortgage, so I can breathe a little bit, right? And then maybe I'll treat myself, and maybe I'll lease a really nice car, like an Audi R8 for a year or two, just to get out of my system, or I can rent it on Turo and get out of my system, right? That was my dream car for the longest time. I don't know why. Look, maybe because of Iron Man. But in any case, this is how wealth is compounded. I just focused for the past 11 years. I saved 50, 60, 70% of my income for the past 11 years. It sounds crazy, sounds simple, but it takes insane amount of discipline. You have to live humbly. You have to live frugally. You can't get caught up comparing yourself to the Joneses. I live below my means always, and I've always focused on buying income generating assets, right? And my main vehicle is real estate, and I buy index funds, which pay dividends on a monthly or quarterly basis, right? And now I am constantly improving, and now I'm trying to build more businesses that produce more income, that I can use that income to then basically invest in more assets, right? Or buy more liabilities, because if I have more income, then I can afford to buy more liabilities, right? So selfishly, that's kind of what I'm trying to do. If I can make more money through another business, I can then spend a little money to splurge, right? But it's relatively speaking, it's a percentage of what I'm taking. So, hopefully this rant is valuable to you, and how I built up my $6 million net worth is just focus on buying assets for the past 11 years, and focus on keeping my income as high as possible and raising it, and keeping my expenses minimal, or trying to minimize it as long as possible, right? And I've been able to do that for 11 years and hope to do it longer. I think the moment my time stops is when I have kids and you have to spend more money, but it might be a limiting belief, but you can spend as much as you want on your kids, or spend as little as you want on your kids, right? So it really is that fine balance. And that's how I compounded my net worth over time to $6 million, and hope to continue to compound it as I hold onto my real estate, as I hold onto my index funds, and as I build my active income businesses. So anyways, if you found value, please like, comment, subscribe. If you want to buy multifamily real estate, want to buy some multifamily assets or some guidance, check out the mentorship program. If you want to surround yourself with like-minded multifamily investors, consider joining my school community. I have weekly live Q&A calls there, and you can network with my other students. Anyways, please like, comment, subscribe, and hope to see you next one. Thank you so much.